afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another Propagandacast Addendum with me, your host, Imperial Dane. As we continue here with a topic of things that could probably be done better in inCoh3. This time we're going to be talking about team games. It's not something you talk about a lot, but I do think there's a lot of room for improvement. For starters, there needs to be some kind of separation in terms of balancing from one versus ones and team games, because right now there's definitely, I think, a flawed approach trying to balance both in the same way. I mean, it sort of leads to a situation where they nerfed the Panther, which was essentially not used in 1 vs 1s, and actually made it worse because apparently a lot of people were spamming in 4 vs 4 games. I mean, that's completely bonkers. They're just, balancing the game that way, and I think highlights some of the, already there systemic issues in a sense, which in large part I think just draws down in part to the resource, but also a bit the player base. But again, large part resources and the fact you got more players on the maps, which usually allows for other things. But there's also another element in there, I think, which is overall just map design. And I do think at times they have some really terrible maps in like team games. I mean, in 2 vs 2, there's 1 vs 1 maps, which I definitely do not think have any belonging there. And maps like also Rails and Metal should just be remanded to where that abyss they spawned from, because I mean that's just a map that's too narrow for 2 vs 2. I mean, in that regard, fixing up just and admitting that perhaps it just needs to be less resources in your larger team games, but also they need to design better maps for team games. I mean, they need to stop, designing a large series of choke points, and also be careful how they use buildings and so on there. But again, also stop using 1 vs 1s and 2 vs 2 maps. That's just terrible as well. But again, in part, I also think it's just on the basic level, they need to admit that balancing 1 vs 1s and balancing team games is not the same thing. Not by a long shot. Because again, as I mentioned, their map design is different, or should be different at least. Resources, of course, work differently when you got a lot more players. It allows for more specialization, allows sometimes just more pressure on, in particular again if the map is small, so there's less frontage to cover, which again is very important to keep in mind. And again, why they need to work, and just in part than just the map design. But also in part, I think it's just also the slight difference in the type of players that play 1 vs 1s. Overall team games, particularly as they become larger, there might be a slightly more casual element, just other elements to it as well there. So in that regard, trying to balance a 1 vs 1 like a 4 vs 4 is just not particularly sane. And again, also a bit out of touch, but again, leads you to nerfing a unit which is not even used in 1 vs 1s. Hell, they nerfed the elephant, which wasn't used in 1 vs 1s at all. They nerfed that again with absolutely no consideration for that, and that's kind of the thing. I mean, there's just this disconnect when they're balancing between 1 vs 1s and team games, and especially then just not balance something based on the team games, they can risk just completely screwing all 1 vs 1s because of that, and that's really unhealthy. Really seriously unhealthy. That's definitely one thing that needs to stop. And again, one issue, and again, it's probably not going to be easy, because again, they might have to do with several balance teams or something like that. But I think there's other ways to look into it. Again, one of them is the resources. Less fuel, less munitions for the larger team games, or they could sort of try and make just harder to tech up. I mean, there are a lot of ways to do this rather than just go, well, apparently they're spamming a lot of Panthers in 4 vs 4s, but they're not using it at all in 1 vs 1s. Clearly, we need to make the Panther even worse in 1 vs 1s to fix this problem. Which, of course, means the Valmet, which is already a struggling faction in 1 vs 1s, gets worse as well. Brilliant. Let's head home for beers and, poutine. Again, a clear sign of disconnect there between, different team games and overall design and overall balance. So there definitely needs to be some kind of admission, some kind where they sort of just go, alright, this is not working. We have to come up with a better solution for Companies 3 to avoid, these messes we had in Companies 2, because quite frankly, they are utter bloody messes. And of course, again, map design. Obviously, maps like Val Farmlands are great. They're not just, centered around a series of choke points. There's a lot of room to maneuver, a lot of room to put tanks in and all that. And, they're less just prone to just making blobbing amazing, because that's another thing. Like, the more players you add to a game, the more likely blobbing is going to be utilized, in part because, again, you might just be able to catch a player off guard and just wipe all of this stuff. Again, if there's one side usually tries to play out tactically spread out, and the other just decides to blob up, it's going to be, easy to just wipe out a lot of stuff because the other player doesn't have a chance to stop it. That's another thing. Like, blobbing just becomes inherently more powerful as you add more players. Part because, again, it'll also be in certain point, again, unless they make really, really massive maps, which is unlikely to happen, again, you can just sort of, don't need so many troops to hold a large frontage, which again just further increases the power of blobbing. So in that regard, they probably also need to admit that, you know, we need better blob counters, much better. There needs to be some kind of punishment in some other way that makes it less amazing to blob up as well there, because otherwise again that's just going to be a recurring issue as well in the team games, I feel, on top of that. So I mean, there's sort of a lot of issues, and a bunch of them are pretty much, I think, just systemic to larger team games. But again, some of the ultimate space in the whole, you know, trying to balance 1 versus 1 around team games is just folly and needs to stop permanently. Because otherwise, again, we just sort of get the whole, well, we're nerfing the panther, we're nerfing the elephant, but they're not using 1 versus 1s at all. We prefer them to be made more useful. No, they're too good. We need to nerf them. And there you go. I mean, just 2 units were barely, if not used at all, just got made even worse. I mean, no matter how you look at that, that really should be another point we just go, hang on, are we the bad guys? You know, like that sketch from, you know, that show. I can't quite remember that. But, you know, it's just, when you're doing that, you're not particularly keen on doing a very good job if you're just being so completely, utterly, you know, distanced from it. So I think there just needs to be an admission that, again, balancing 1 versus 4, 1 versus 1 and 4 versus 4 is not the same thing, and they just need to permanently just disconnect the two. But again, better map design, stopping to use 1 versus 1 to 2 versus 2 maps, and, you know, all smaller maps for larger team games is also, I think, going to be a huge help. And it's just, you know, some admissions there that there's going to be some differences, and they should be more careful with it. And again, that's really it, I think, because I mean, currently, I mean, the part of the reason the game is such a mess is because they decided they should just balance it as a team game, and of course it really messed things up, not just in the team games, because in some ways they activated worse there, but it also made things worse in 1 versus 1s. So I don't know, I mean, you really have to balance team games, you know, around it, you know, do it separately from the 1 versus 1s. I think that's one of the prime lessons here. Very much prime lessons with, you know, capital P-L. So there you go, that's sort of my video here on that topic. I still hope they get around to adding a patch soon, because this is still rather silly. So there you go, hope you enjoyed this video, hope you learned something from it. If you did, you know, subscribe, like, share, comment on it. See you all another time for another video. This is Imperial Dane signing off. Cheers. Imperial Dane. Blah. Cheers. There we go.